I mean, it depends on who you have. The two doctors that I interviewed with were fantastic, awesome, like just wonderful people to talk to. I don't think, I mean, I can say this for most of the, or actually all the schools I interviewed at, no one's ever trying to like trip you up and like make you confused about things. I had some really difficult questions at one of the schools I interviewed at. They gave me like a scenario not related to medicine. A lot of schools give you like medical related scenarios, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just like your opinion, and like as long as you can morally back up why you said that, there's no right or wrong answer. But I got a couple really like kind of odd questions about like what I would do in certain scenarios that had nothing to do with medicine. Like I was at a bank and like things like that. Like it's very, very strange. But at the end of the day, it's like as long as you can defend whatever you're saying, there's no right or wrong answer. Like they just want to get to know you as a person. So particularly the Greenville though, like piece of cake. Like I thought that was a wonderful interview. I had fun. Like I actually genuinely had fun in my interviews. It was great. So that was my experience out there.
Kind of an aside, like I think some of the schools have like a cookie hour afterwards, where depending on the school, like some of the interviewers might be there. It's like if that's the case, like you don't want to be like pushy, shovey, like respectful of your fellow interviewers, but like you want to make sure you go up and talk because like they'll notice if you talk to them or not.
I got asked at, I think at MEOC, I got asked 5 different things I could do with a potato, like 5 applications for it. Which like potato pluck, obviously 1, fries obviously 2. The other 3 were kind of difficult to think of. And I think in Greenville I got asked, I forgot what it was, like who is somebody in history that you most relate to? And luckily the only book I've read my first 3 years of college for fun, it was like a Malcolm Gladwell book, and I was able to relate to that. So the people were pretty impressed by my answer. So you get tricky questions now.
So I'll add just for physical therapy. With the group interview, they were wanting to know more just about your personality, not necessarily your application. And so I, just Googled questions. To prepare, I thought of like different themes and different qualities of myself, like integrity, overcoming challenges, and thought of different anecdotes to be able to relate. And so any question, whatever form it was in, however it was like hidden in the phrase, I was able to use that. But then they asked the stereotypical, what's the last book you read for fun? Mm-hmm. They asked who, past, present, dead or alive, I'd want to eat dinner with. And they asked, they asked some of the standard interview questions that I was like, oh, there's probably no way they're going to ask, I'm going into a medical profession. And I mean, I had thought of those. I was like, okay, worst case scenario, let me just be extremely prepared. And I'm glad I did because some people in my group were not. So just make sure you're definitely really, really prepared.
Somebody asked me what I wanted written on my gravestone. Are you going to kill me?
Yeah, I was gonna throw out there one more. Like I just thought of this. This was the hardest question I got. It wasn't at Greenville, but I was given a scenario that me and my parents were like driving on a road trip, and all of a sudden we get in a foreign state that we're like not used to being in. All of a sudden we got in a car accident, and my mother had to be airlifted to the like nearest hospital, and had to be like surgically like taken care of by a surgeon that I didn't know. And they asked me, would I rather the surgeon be extremely moral or extremely ethical? And that was like the hardest. I was like, what? Like moral or ethical? Like, so just think about like the questions that they ask you, like that are going to be those types of questions, which they're few and far between. Like most of the time, it's just like an easygoing like conversation about your application. But if you get like an ethics-based question, like just like look up Google, some like it comes up. Like if you Google like medical school ethics like questions, it'll come up. Just know like some basic, I don't know, like ethical things. But most of you are probably ethical people to begin with, so it's fine. We're great. Yeah. What?
Also, just to build on that, if I were to have that question, I would have no idea what the difference is between an ethically good person and a morally good person.
That was like the hardest question. I was like,
and so don't try to BS your way out of it. Ask them what their definitions are, because if you do BS their way out of it and that's not what they're thinking of, they'll grill you on the spot, and you probably won't get it. So make sure to like just ask if you have questions.
Yeah.
About their questions.
There's a lot of different ways like to prepare, I guess, but like just practicing having a professional conversation, like really communicating like what your strengths are and why you're a good fit for that school. So part of that involves like doing research on the school, like what's like their mission and themes and all that.
just one thing that I thought of, they asked to talk about a controversial issue in the realm of physical therapy, like a current topic that is being discussed. And so it's definitely really important that, you're going into this field, you should know what's going on, which, I don't know, hopefully most people will be prepared for that. I actually had a person in my group who was not, and it looked awful. So, you don't have to be an expert in the field, but just to make sure that you cover your bases and have something to elaborate on.
For those of you who did study abroad, how often was it brought up in your application, and what did they ask you if it was brought up?
The only studying abroad I did was Nicaragua. I went on a spring break, like capstone Nicaragua trip. That came up frequently, but that was because it was like medically based. But are you thinking about studying abroad outside of like that? Yeah, mission trips that comes up a lot. And as long as you can they know what those types of things are. Like if you're like, oh, I want a medical mission trip, they understand oh, you went and set up a clinic, probably. That's what most medical mission trips are. So yeah, it's not hard to answer those types of questions. Mostly it's just oh, what did you learn? Or what's something really cool you saw? Those were some of the easier questions, I think.
I was lined up to go to Spain and everything. I was going to do half classes and then half working in a hospital, so I could kind of make sure I had my medical part in there. Another opportunity came up and I had to throw that one away, but I think it would be a great idea. Go ahead. Have fun.
Yeah.
It's college.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to study abroad, you do you. It's possible. There's a lot of people that NYU that study abroad, so.
All right, we'll start with Michael down there. How did each of you go about getting a recommendation letter, and from how many science and non-science did you go?
I'm a chemistry major. I had 2 letters, one from my quantum, Dr. Chen, and then one from Dr. Handy. Dr. Handy and I had kind of a special relationship though, because I got to teach for him in the lab, so that was cool. But outside of that, I had Dr. DePetti, who's at USC here in Columbia. And I guess your question is how I went about getting the letters. Pretty much, I just got to know them over time, hanging out with them as much as I could with all my extra time. Obviously, if you know Dr. Handy, he loves having people in there and just getting to know him. If not, if you don't know him, just go talk to your professor after class, before class, see if you can get involved with anything they're doing as far as research, or just build relationships it's really individually based, so it's hard to tell you guys how you should do it without being in your shoes, I guess. So get to know them really well, and no matter what they do, make sure they know a lot about you too, and they'll write a good one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Coffee's good.
Yeah, anytime you buy them too.
Yeah.
Any public health majors there, Dr. Winningham, she's always she's probably one of the rare professors that says yes, please contact me. I'd love to write letters of recommendation. So I had a couple like that. Late summer, I think I turned my application in August, but I realized I need a couple more letters, and so I had asked one of my physics professors to write me one, and he's I just can't do it, and then I was I really need another science letter. And so I just emailed him and just showed up to his office, and you don't want somebody to write you a bad letter, so if somebody says yeah, I can't write you a good letter, then you probably want to take the word for it, but just after talking with him more, he's okay, yeah, I'll write you a letter, and that ended up being one, he asked me more about my family, my background, what led me into medicine, and so he wrote, more of a unique letter, beyond just being a student in this class. So persistence, as well as just they say they can't help you with a letter, take the word for it.
Yeah, I only had one science letter from Dr. Thompson, who's the anatomy professor for exercise science, and I had my econ professor and my research dude from Michigan, and so I went to their office hour, not Michigan obviously, I emailed him, called him on the phone actually, but for the 2 in USC people, I just went to their office, and I was good buddies with them beforehand, I knew them, so I just went to their office and asked them. It was actually, for the exercise science one, it was a test review or something, and it was 10 in the morning, and I walked in, waking up at 9:50, not taking a shower, probably smelling like shit, and proceeded to ask him to write me a letter of rec. So I was really worried about that one. But then it ended up working well. You just have to get to know your professors, talk to them outside of class, Having small classes is great. That's why I got my econ professor to write me one, because you interact a lot more. But if it's like a big class, make an effort to talk outside of class, ask lots of questions in the class. If you have like personal information that can relate to class, do that, because then the professor knows you're more analytical. I asked my exercise science, I asked the anatomy professor about the theory of everything one time, the movie, because Stephen Hawking had the disease that we were talking about in class. I'm like, this is what he had, right? And he was actually impressed by that. So just get to know people.
You did ask a lot of questions in Thompson's class.
I was in your class.
Yeah.
So for physical therapy, you literally can only have 3 letters. One's from a professor, one's from a physical therapist, and one from your volunteer experience. So going back, that's why you want to do something meaningful to make relationships, because you absolutely need to have that one. For my professor, mine was, I'm a medical humanities minor, so I took the medical ethics class, and I took a public health ethics class, and it was taught by the same professor, and it was a fall spring, so I had her the entire year, which was nice, and most classes were under 30 students. But those classes were all discussion. The medical ethics class was all group work, and so she really got to know me as a student and how I work. So the class was set up to where one person had to be a leader during the week, and then at the end of the week, your other team graded how your leadership skills were. And you got to see your reviews, and so she got to know those certain aspects of me as a student, which I think were really important. And so she was in the medical field, but it wasn't like a science professor. It was just how I was most comfortable. I never really, I went to her office once, and she reviewed a paper that I was working on. But really, I didn't do anything other than make sure I always showed up to class. I presented myself well, and I just knew that was going to be my one professor that I had the closest connection with, so it was easier for me. Oh, and then I also, I talked to her about last year when I was part of the AED and the leadership. So I asked her, to come speak, kind of let her know what the organization was about. So that way she got to know that I was also involved on campus, which I think a lot of professors like to know, is how your student experiences outside of their classroom, which is cool.
I got actually a lot of letters, I guess more than I actually needed, but that's I guess my tip to everybody is, so summer before or spring semester before your senior year, because you'll be applying, presumably unless you're taking a gap year, that summer, before your senior year. So spring semester, that's when I got all my letters together. It's so much easier if you do it before you leave to go home for the summer. I live in Missouri, so I can't go knock on my professor's door in South Carolina because I'm not here. So I got all of my letters that semester before I left, and I collected them on Interfolio, and if you want more info on that later, it's the bomb. It's really easy, and they can just submit them electronically, and you can send them to AMCAS later. But I got my letters from Dr. Chen, who Michael also got a letter from. She's awesome. She's a chemistry professor, and she offered to write me mine, and that was I guess one of my struggles, going into the application process is I never really had a really super hard time in any of my science classes, so I never had to go to their office hours every day or anything like that. But if you just sit in the front row of class, if you feel dumb, it's fine. Sit in the front row of class, show up early. Michael and I were always in Dr. Chen's class early, and she just got to know us because we were always paying attention. She knew who we were just because we sat in the front, paid attention, took good notes, and then she got to know me because I did well in her class and things like that. So it's little things like that. You don't have to be annoying and go to their office hours 100 times